very fortunate today in having a friend of mine speak on the voting situation. I've known Ruth for several years. We attend the same church and adult Bible study, which our father is in charge of. She's very active in the Grossman School District. She was retired as a teacher from Valhalla High School. Her father was also a teacher, district teacher, so she grew up with respect for the American history. It was on and on about the discounted votes or missing votes, basically found to be misleading or dead. So without further ado, Ruth.
Ruth.
Even the dog knows my name, isn't that absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Chuck, and I'm just really honored to be here to talk to you today. You're a fun group, and thanks to Chuck, I think I've shaken hands with almost everybody in the room today, and it's been a great pleasure to meet you. So, what I want to talk to you about today, full disclosure, I have an agenda. It's a threefold agenda. First, I'm hoping to give you some information about why we maybe have a little bit of work to do in terms of the integrity of our voting process in California and in the country. Because a lot of people just really aren't aware of what the problems are or why we have them. So that will be agenda number one. The second agenda is to introduce you to an organization that I'm here representing. I'm the San Diego County Coordinator for the Election Integrity Project. And I want to give you just a very brief overview of some of the things that we are doing in order to return integrity to the election process in California. And then the third part of my agenda is hopefully with those two parts, having convinced you that there's work to do and that every citizen needs to be part of it, I'm hoping that some of you will step forward to try to find out more about our organization and if there is a part that you can play in what we are doing. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. And the first part is... Okay, why did you not?
Robert?
My fault. I pushed the button and I didn't push it hard enough. But why do we need an election integrity project? Well, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? What comes out when we say words like, voter fraud and stuff like that? What do you think of?
Chicago.
That's the number one answer all the time. Absolutely. Everybody says Chicago, right? And we hear stories from across the nation occasionally if we're paying attention. Not long ago, there were some people in New York who were indicted and they entered a guilty plea, and they were very high up in the party apparatchiks, and they admitted to manipulating the system. Some of you may have heard the stories that came out of the Iowa primary just last week or a week and a half ago, that they can't even determine who won, because there are enough votes that got lost somehow that they don't even know for sure who was the winner. Okay, and then right after that, can we maybe light the audience a little bit?
Here we are.
Is that good enough? Okay. And then in the New Hampshire primary, there was a sting operation conducted by James O'Keefe. You may have seen the videos. Where his people were given the names of individuals they knew to be deceased and were still on the voter rolls. And they fanned out across the entire state, and they entered the voting precincts, and they claimed to be these people and were not questioned. They signed, they were given a ballot. Now, they didn't actually cast those ballots, so they didn't commit fraud, but what they were out to do is to prove how easy it is to impersonate a voter and to therefore have votes being cast that are illegal. It's real easy to think, okay, that's happening in Iowa, that's happening in New Hampshire, that's happening in Chicago, but those are isolated cases. They're not isolated at all. I'm here to tell you that it's widespread in the country, and it's right here in this state, it's right here in this county. And there are reasons for it, and there are reasons why we should very much be concerned about that. Because every time any vote is cast or counted that shouldn't have been, your right to vote is taken away. Your civil rights are being violated by that, and that needs to be something that we need to worry about. One of the reasons that we have problems is even though voting is a state issue, there are a couple of national laws that were well-intentioned and did some very great things, but they also had unintended consequences of leaving some pretty big gaps that fraud and mistake and carelessness and apathy can walk right through. One of those is the National Voting Rights Act of 1993. In Section 7 of that law, there was, they said that any person going into any government office to do business, any government agency to do any kind of business, had to be offered a voter registration form. This was to make sure that more and more people could become part of the process, and that was a very good intent. Unfortunately, we know that a lot of people in this country choose to be disenfranchised. They choose not to be part of the process. They just are disengaged, and we all know that. But because this was an unfunded mandate, people would walk into welfare office, unemployment office, social security office, DMV, which is why this act got the nickname voter law. You may have heard of that one. And people would go into these places to do business, and the clerks that were dealing with them were not educated because it was an unfunded mandate, so they didn't get any training. And it depends on how they offer these registration forms to people. So it's very easy to assume that in some cases, the people there to do business got the impression that they didn't have a choice. That in order to do the business they came to do, they'd have to fill out that form. And so they registered to vote with no intention of wanting to register to vote, and therefore they weren't going to go and vote. And we'll talk about what happens as a result of that. We also had people who would have said, gee, I'm already registered. And a clerk with all good intentions might say, well, fill it out just in case. They don't understand, like most of us don't understand, that the system isn't set up to catch things like that. So quite often we have duplicate voters, a person registered to vote more than one time who had no intention of being a duplicate voter, and neither did the person who registered them. But because the system doesn't always catch those things, we now have a person on there twice or 3 times unintentionally. Section 7 also required all states to take mail-in registration. Now, if you've ever registered a voter, you know that you're not allowed to ask any questions anyway. But the form does. The forms, you have to check off, yes, I'm a citizen, yes, I'm living in this county, yes, I'm over 18, that kind of thing. And when you are eyeball to eyeball with a person registering, there's some sense of accountability there, there's a little bit of conscience that kicks in that keeps you more honest. But if you can take that registration home and just fill it in at home, the chances of your not feeling as accountable go up. And this was a great protection for people who have very busy lives and have moved and, oh, I have to re-register, and they just don't have time to just stop and do it. And so they can pick it up off the table outside the grocery store or wherever else that people are registering. They can take it home, fill it out, mail it in. It's a great way to make sure nobody loses out on the process, but there is that unintended consequence. As a result of these things, we get bloated voter rolls. We have voter rolls full of people who don't intend to vote, who never did intend to vote, or who are on there twice without intending to be on there twice. What does that mean? Well, at the beginning, in the 60s and 70s, it meant that our turnout statistics in elections were very low, and that's disappointing, and it's also very discouraging to us. We say, oh man, we really care about this thing, and only 37% of the people turn out to vote, and that would make us feel very bad about our democratic process. But if you take out all the people who never intended to vote in the first place, and the people who may be on there twice, really we had much better turnout. But it didn't change the fact that all of us felt kind of demoralized by those low voter turnouts. Then as years went on, we had an explosion of phantom voters as it became easier to manipulate the system. And phantom voters are people, I'll give you one example. This is a true story of a person who was calling from party headquarters, doing what party headquarters do, and calling voters. And said, the gentleman said, hello, may I please speak to Cindy? And the gentleman answering the phone said, why do you want to talk to Cindy? He says, well, I'm calling from party headquarters, and I'd like to speak to Cindy about the upcoming election. I repeat my question, why do you want to talk to Cindy? Well, Cindy's registered with our party, and we just wanted to let her know some of the issues and talk to her about the candidates. Don't you know Cindy's only 11 years